Marisela Cervantes, and I'm Chair of the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. And I'm calling this meeting to order at 10:09. Mr. Gage, can you call the roll to establish quorum?
Certainly. Cervantes.
Here.
Kasuga.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin by introducing Ms. Lizelle McCochran. She is the CPD and Renewals Coordinator to make an announcement for the meeting. Ms.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. So attending today's committee meeting provides you with CPD credit. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as June 16th, 2023, and note that we are here for the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee meeting. At the end of the meeting, I will announce how many hours you can be credited. If you called into the meeting, please email bopce@dca.gov with your license number and the phone number used to call in. And if you signed in using the computer or mobile device, your attendance is automatically documented and no further information is necessary. All right, back to you, Dr. Cervantes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, I'd just like to welcome Dr. Kasuga and Dr. Phillips, as well as the staff joining our committee for the first time. The board held a special meeting where we discussed legislative and regulatory affairs earlier in the spring, but I just want to take an opportunity to welcome Cynthia Whitney, Central Services Manager, Mr. Troy Polk, Legislative and Regulatory Analyst, Ms. Brittany Eng, Board Counsel, and Ms. Karen Hubble, Regulatory Counsel. And so now I just want to do, by way of housekeeping and to create some predictability, I want to aim to take a break at noon. And when we get close to that time, what I'd like to do is check in with the committee members and staff and make a decision if we should move forward with our business or take a short lunch break of 45 minutes and then return to finish our business. Does that sound good, Doctors Phillips and Kasuga?
Sounds great.
Fine by me, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now moving on to item number 3 on our agenda. This is public comment for items not on the agenda. Note that the committee may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda at a future meeting. Is there any, a moderator, can you please open public comment?
Absolutely. We are now accepting public comment for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. You can do so by tapping the hand button at the bottom, or if you are a dial-in user, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning before your time expires. And we're going to wait just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. Okay, so moving on to item number 4. This is meeting minutes from June 10th, 2022. This item begins on page 9 of the combined packet. Do we have a motion to approve the June 10th committee meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Kasuga. Is there any committee or staff comment on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, can we open public comment?
We are now accepting public comment on the motion for meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. You may do so by hitting the hand button on your screen, or if you are a dial-in user, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request on the motion, shall we continue?
Yes, please. Moving to item number 5 on the agenda. This is legislation from the 2023 legislative session to review and possible action. Item 5A
Madam
is a
Chairwoman,
yes.
do we need to vote on item number 4?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a brain hiccup and I have it written right here. Okay, hearing no public comment. Mr. Gage, can you please call for a vote of approval of the minutes?
Indeed. Cervantes,
Aye.
Kasuga,
Aye.
and Phillips.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. All right, now we're moving on to item number 5, 5A. I got excited there. So this is legislation from the 2023 legislative session. 5A is review of bills for active position recommendations to the board. And 5A number 1 is SB 815 Healing Arts. This item begins on page 17 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
SB 815, this bill would make various changes to the Medical Board of California by the legislator through the sunset process. In specific, Section 10 of the bill would transfer the registration, regulations, and enforcement of research psychoanalysts from the Medical Board to the Board of Psychology. The bill would also transfer funds collected from the licensing and regulation of research psychoanalysts to the board as well. Board staff met with the medical board staff and at the time requested a delayed implementation until January 1st of 2025, as the board is currently underway with preparations in a new registration category for psychological testing technicians, which is in part with SB 1428, which was signed into law last year. This delayed implementation would give the board time to prepare for the additional registration category for the research psychoanalysts. On May 19th, the board adopted a support if amended position. The amendment included the requested delayed implementation until January 1st of 2025. Currently, the bill passed the Senate and was ordered to the Assembly on May 31st. On June 8th, SB 815 was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions, and a support if amended letter has been submitted to all committee members and the committee consultants, as well as the author, Senator Roth. At this time, board staff is continuing to monitor SB 815 as it makes its way through the committee and through the assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment on this item? Hearing none, can we open public comment on item 5A1? I could not make out the entirety of that comment. And I'm not sure it seems like we're having audio problems.
Madam Chair, this is the moderator. I believe that is what Caesar was trying to tell us, is that there was an audio hiccup. Perhaps it'd be good to repeat your request.
Okay. First I asked if there was any committee or staff comment on item 5A1. And I heard none. And so I asked if we could do public comment.
All right. We are open for public comment on 5A1, SB 815. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand by tapping the hand button on your screen, or dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to wait just a second now to see if we have a request for public comment.
Dr. Cervantes, this is Dr. Kasuga.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, is this for information only, or do we need to have an action for this item?
We're not going to have an action. We already have a position.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you. And that is the delayed implementation for January 2025. Correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, let's continue. Okay. Let's see. I'm concerned if I'm having connection challenges that are creating an audio problem. I think if you have I guess that if you have feedback for me, I'd appreciate it, and maybe we could change who's moderating the meeting if it's stopping us from progressing.
Madam Chair, I've heard everything you've said, I think.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Phillips.
I think for me, sometimes it gets cut, but like for the most part, I can hear everything. There's just certain pauses that happens. I don't know if other people are experiencing the same.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback. So we're gonna move to item 5B, bills with active positions taken by the board. On this agenda item, we're going to receive updates on the 6 bills and the board has taken a position on. After each update, we're going to open to comments by the committee or staff and then the public. Ready? Here, we have positions on these, so we're not going to take motions on these particular bills. 5B. Item 1 is AB 282, Aguiar Curry, psychologist licensure. This item begins on page 57 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Yes, thank you again. AB 282 would revise sections of the section 2914 of the Business and Professions Code, which would allow applicants seeking licensure to be eligible to take the required licensure exams, which includes the examination of professional practice in psychology, also known as the EPPP, and the California Psychology Law and Ethics examination, also known as the CPLE. The proposed language would allow applicants at any time after all academic coursework required for a qualifying doctoral degree is completed In addition, the bill would require the board to revise California Code sections of the regulations of 1388 and 1388C, which would require to remove the completion of the qualified supervised professional experience hours to be eligible to take the licensure exams. On April 7th, the board adopted an opposed unless amended position. The proposed amendment was to add the wording as specified by the board to Section D of the proposed language. Currently, the bill passed the Assembly and was ordered to the Senate on April 27th. On May 10th, AB 282 was referred to the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. On May 12th, the board submitted a opposed unless amended letter to the committee members, as well as the consultants, and as well as to the author's office as well. And at this time, board staff is continuing to monitor AB 282 as it makes its way through the Assembly or the Senate committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment?
None for me, thank you.
Thank you. Can we open? Oh, I have Ms. Sorick.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. I just wanted to clarify, in addition to the board taking an opposed unless amended position at the May meeting, the board approved regulatory language which spelled out when an applicant would be eligible to take the various exams. So I just wanted to add that additional context for the discussion today.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. My own concern is not knowing and not understanding where this change can cause harm to doctoral students finishing their degree and starting the licensure process. It just, the educator in me has some discomfort with that. But I appreciate all of the staff work that has gone into looking at this issue more closely. Is there any public comment?
We are now accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please tap the hand button to raise your hand. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And I saw a hand up. If the person who had that hand up would raise it again, I will call on you. Otherwise, we're going to close comments in just a few seconds. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. We're going to move to item number 2. This is item 5B2 on the agenda. AB 883 Mathis Business License, U.S. Department of Defense SkillBridge Program. This item begins on page 63 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
Yes, thank you. AB 883, this bill proposes that boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs expedite the initial licensure process for an applicant who supplies satisfactory evidence to the board that the applicant is enrolled in the U.S. Department of Defense's SkillBridge program. The program allows service members to gain civilian experience through specific industry training, apprenticeships, or internships during the applicant's last 180 days of military service or active service. On April 7th, the board adopted a support position. On May 30th, AB 883 passed the Assembly and was ordered to the Senate. On June 7th, AB 883 was referred to the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. A support letter was submitted to the committee, and staff provided an in-person testimony in support of AB 883 at the committee hearing, which was held on June 12th. On June 12th, AB 883 also passed the committee with full support from all committee members and was then referred to the Senate Committee on Military and Veteran Affairs. A support position letter has been submitted to all committee members and the committee consultants, as well as the author's office, showing the support for AB 883. At this time, board staff is continuing to monitor AB 883 as it makes its way through the different committees and through the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment on this bill? Seeing none, can we open public comment?
We are now accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand by hitting the hand button on your screen, or dial-in users, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Now we are moving to item number 3, AB 996 by Lowe, Department of Consumer Affairs Continuing Education Conflict of Interest Policy. This item begins on page 71 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
AB 996, this bill proposes that boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs develop and maintain a conflict of interest policy that would discourage the qualification of any continuing education course if the provider of that course has an economic interest in a commercial product or enterprise that is directly or indirectly promoted in that course. On April 7th, the board adopted an opposed position on AB 996. On May 25th, AB 996 passed the Assembly and was then ordered to the Senate. On June 7th, AB 996 was referred to the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development, and a hearing was scheduled for June 12th. A opposed letter was submitted to the committee, and staff attended the in-person hearing. However, AB 996 was pulled from that day's agenda at the request of the author. AB 996 has since been rescheduled for a hearing on June 19th. At this time, board staff is continuing to monitor AB 996 as it makes its way through the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment on this bill? Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So has the committee or has the author accepted the proposed technical amendments from the Department of Consumer Affairs?
At this time, there hasn't been any further amendments on AB 996.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other staff or committee comments?
Ms. Sorick?
Go ahead.
Yes.
I understand wasn't there a meeting around this bill between DCA and the author and affected boards?
That was for SB 372.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I just, this bill, it was our understanding that this was a placeholder bill. And it was supposed to be amended to address some concerns that were brought up, but it has not been amended and it's been sailing through the process. So it was amended on March 27th, and it was just very minor amendments just to address conflicts to be disclosed at the beginning of each CE course. So I'm not sure about this one, and I'm not sure how it's continuing to move through the process.
We may also want to ask counsel, as the bill as I read it says that it only, that if a board approves continuing education providers or continuing education courses, or at least that's the way the summary read to me. And we do neither of those things. We approve organizations that approve continuing education providers. I don't know if that's a meaningful distinction of the law, but it may give us a workaround.
Ms. Ng, it's a relatively short bill, and as Dr. Phillips mentioned, we approve the approvers. So, based on how it's worded, would we be exempt from this requirement for our providers?
Just give me a minute, as there's some other sections referenced in the bill that I'll pull up as well. So as I read it, section 36 provides any entity listed in section 101 that is responsible for approving continuing education providers or courses shall develop the policy. So are you saying that you don't believe the Board of Psychology fits into this because they don't approve CE providers themselves? Dr. Phillips, am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
I see we're listed in section 101 of the B&P code, but again, we approve the approvers, not the providers.
I mean, that's certainly a distinction that I think you could argue, considering the mechanism the board is following doesn't fit this framework. Yeah, I think you could certainly make that point.
It's an issue we may want to look at more as if it goes through in its current form.
That sounds like a good plan as we prepare for the August meeting. Perhaps we can have more legal counsel input on how it would apply to the board if it continues to move through the process.
And it would be to understand operationally what the implications are. Like, would that mean that we would have to suddenly not qualify certain PD courses until providers cleared some process? Like, what might that mean at that point? If you could tell us, or we could talk about that at our August meeting. Does that make sense? You know what I'm thinking about? I don't know if I explained it well.
We'll have input on what the application or implementation of the bill would look like should it pass, I mean.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Phillips, Ms. Sorik, and Ms. Ng. Is there any other comment? Can we open public comment?
My apologies, go ahead.
This is public comment only on item number 3, AB 996, low.
We are accepting public comment on AB 996. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand by hitting the hand button on your screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And it looks like our first request comes from Dr. Courtney Knapp. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, it appears you're unmuted.
Okay, great. So I've taken some recent CE courses, and oftentimes the presenters are very talented therapists, psychologists, and sometimes they have a book that they've written and they might share that. Would that fall under something like this? But they wouldn't be allowed to do that during the training?
Okay. Ms. Ng, could you help us with that? You know what?
I may be able to clarify that.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
Part of the objection we had to this particular piece of legislation is whether it's an author of a book, as you're mentioning, Dr. Knapp, or whether it's a testing company that's developed a new test or has come out with a new version of a test. That's fairly typical within the context of continuing education courses in the field of psychology. This proposed conflict of interest policy doesn't take into account that there's a very substantial portion of the continuing education courses that, although there is a quote unquote economic interest, it's not so substantial that it should dissuade whether it be a testing company, a test author, a book author, it shouldn't dissuade them from providing continuing education courses that relate to the materials. So, Dr. Knapp, I think your comment is right on point. It becomes very confusing when we try to apply it to the psychology field. I understand the point behind these conflict of interest policies as it relates to, for instance, medical device companies or pharmaceutical companies. We don't have those kinds of economic interests at play within psychology typically. So the bill is kind of overbroad. But as I understand the bill, what it would require, if we were required to make this a condition of continuing education, it would be necessary, obviously, for conflict of interest to be disclosed up front at the beginning of a continuing education course. My bigger concern is it's going to dissuade a lot of useful courses from being offered as a result of an overly broad policy.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that like not only, I think we also talked about it on the last board meeting, but not only are like books often promoted and is in line with whatever the training is educating people on, but also there's a lot of continuing education that pertains to psych tests and assessments that actually is very helpful. And if you're getting the training from the creator of the test, so like that would be also not helpful. I mean, I think it's good for them to disclose, but like for them not to be able to do that would be, or to dissuade them to do that would be counter to what the continuing education is trying to do, which is educate us on things that we're using to, help our skills within the field.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga.
This
Is there any...
Can
Go
I,
ahead.
I just wanted
Yes,
to add
please.
on that as it's written, the language of section 36 would require the affected boards to develop and maintain a conflict of interest policy. And as a minimum floor, that policy must discourage the qualification of any CE course if the provider has an economic interest, and two, to require disclosure of the conflict. So I think that there would be room for the affected boards to tailor what that conflict of interest policy means for that particular profession. I just wanted to note that it's kind of just, it is overbroad and that it's asking the boards to develop a policy, and that I think there will be discretion for the boards to tailor that to their particular profession's needs.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Singh. Is there any other public comment?
That was our only request for public comment at the moment.
Okay, we had a robust discussion. So before I move on, I just want to offer, is there any staff comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, number 4, which is SB 372, Menjivar, Department of Consumer Affairs licensee and registrant records name and gender changes. This item begins on page 78 of the combined packet, and we received updated language in a hand carry item earlier this week. Mr. Polk, can you give us an update?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so on April 7th, the board adopted an opposed position on SB 372. On May 22nd, SB 372 passed the Senate and was then referred to the Assembly. On May 31st, the board met with DCA, the author's office, sponsors, and other affected boards to discuss possible amendments on SB 372. The DCA proposed technical amendments to address most of the concerns the board had with the bill were included in the technical amendments. On June 12th, the bill was amended, and the amendments did include the technical amendments that were proposed, and the amended text is included in that hand carry item. So at this time, since SB 372 was amended with the technical amendments that were proposed, and that most of the concerns the board had with this bill were addressed, there is a staff recommendation for the board to remove its opposition and on SB 372 and just to continue to watch the bill as it makes its way through the Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do we have a motion to remove the board's opposed position on SB 372?
So move.
Second.
This is Brittany jumping in here. And just a reminder that it'll be a recommendation to the full.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can modify that to, I move to recommend to the full board that we remove the opposition to the bill and continue to watch it.
Thank you both. So it's been moved by Dr. Kasuga and second by Dr. Phillips to recommend to the board that we remove our opposed position of SB 372. Is there any further committee or staff comment on this? I see none. Could we open public comment?
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand by tapping the hand button on your screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And I see a hand raised by Dr. Marilyn Emus. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Marilyn Imos, Dr. Marilyn Imos from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I was part of this original discussion, and I just want to offer my appreciation for the outcome of this process. I think it's optimal, and I can speak in the name of the department. We have also policies that would support the spirit of this process. So thank you. We really appreciate having this discussion and the board being so diligent and conscientious in providing these modifications so that this could go forward in a way that really is optimal for the goals we want to achieve on all sides. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Next, we have a request from Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you for considering recommending removal of the opposition. CPA is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, and we think it's going to be very helpful to protect people's privacy and safety, and that the amendments will be explaining how the consumers will also be protected. We're glad that this process has resulted in your reconsideration, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
And Mr. Gage, let's call for a vote on the motion to recommend to the board that to remove the opposition to SB 372.
Certainly. Cervantes.
Aye.
Kazuga.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. I just want to, before I move on to the next one, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into our position on this bill and the diligence of the staff to propose our position and stay on top of it and update us into this week to make sure that we were on the record with an updated position. Thank you, everybody, for staying on top of it. I really appreciate it. The next item is number 5, SB 816, Roth, Professions and Vocations. This item begins on page 93 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Thank you again. SB 816, on April 21st, the board was notified that the bill authored by Senator Roth would include proposed fee changes for boards that are not currently going through the sunset process, and that the proposed fee increases would be included into SB 816 as long as there was no significant opposition to the proposed fee changes. On April 26th, the updated language was submitted to the Legislative Affairs Division within the Department of Consumer Affairs. On May 17th, the board was notified that SB 816 would be amended once the bill was ordered to the Assembly. On May 24th, SB 816 passed the Senate and was ordered to the Assembly, and on June 1st was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. At this time, the board's proposed fee proposal has not been amended into SB 816 yet, but we are continuing to monitor the bill and we'll look for the amendments as this bill continues to move through the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment? Seeing none, can we open public comment?
We are now accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand by tapping that hand button on your screen. For dial-in users, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And looking around, I see no requests for public comment at the moment.
Thank you. Let's close public comment. Now we're moving to item 5B6, which is SB 887 Consumer Affairs. This item begins on page 95 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk.
Yes, thank you. SB 887, this bill includes the language that would streamline the application process to allow verification following review of a transcript that clearly indicated in the course title that the specific coursework had been completed. Additionally, this bill would allow the department chair to act as an additional entity who could provide written certification for convenience for applicants in the case where the course title did not adequately indicate the coursework that was completed. On May 11th, SB 887 passed the Senate and was ordered to the Assembly. On May 18th, SB 887 was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. On May 30th, the board submitted a support position letter that was submitted to all committee members. And at this time, the board is continuing to monitor SB 887 as it makes its way through the committee and through the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any committee or staff comment? Seeing none, could we open public comment?
We are once again open for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping that hand button. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And it does not appear that we have any requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and move to item 5C. These are watch bills that the board is monitoring. These items are informational. They begin on page 193 of the combined packet. And our packet actually has updates for each of the bills. Dr. Kasuga and Dr. Phillips, are there any of the watch bills listed that you would like to discuss?
Would this be an appropriate time to talk about AB or SB 331?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to discuss that one.
Okay.
That's also what I wanted to discuss.
Okay, very well. So by way of process, I would like to open the discussion because this whole item is an informational item. We're going to discuss specifically item number 6, SB 331, Rubio Child Custody, Child Abuse and Safety. That one begins on page 265 of the combined packet. And I would also like to discuss item number 8, SB 544, Laird Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act and Teleconferencing, which begins on page 554 of the combined packet. So we'll discuss those items and then open for committee. We'll discuss each of those items. So after each item, we'll open to staff and committee comment and then public comment. And then we'll take public comment on the whole item C at one time. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, let's start with item C. I'm sorry, item 6, SB 331, Rubio Child Custody, Child Abuse and Safety. Mr. Polk, can you give us an update?
Yes, absolutely. I can provide a background and then I can provide an update of where the bill is currently.
Thank you.
Yep. SB 331 would establish PICU's law, the Safe Child Act, which would prohibit a court from ordering family reunification treatment in a custody or visitation dispute, which includes any counseling, treatment, program, or service, including reunification or reconnection therapy, workshops, classes, and camps intended to reunite or reestablish and repair a relationship between a child and the parent seeking custody or visitation. Additionally, it would require judges involved in the child custody proceeding to report to the Judicial Council and the Judicial Council to report to the legislator on the trainings in the area of domestic violence. There are some concerns with SB 331, which include the stakeholders' concerns regarding reunification camps. Additionally, there's concerns regarding what type of therapy can be court ordered. As of now, the bill is currently in the Assembly and has been referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips?
Yes, the comment, and I want to just clarify something that you said, Mr. Polk, and correct me if I'm wrong. There are conditions under which would have to be met in order for a reunification protocol to be brought forth, including not excluding the primary custodial parent, except in instances where there's shown abuse or neglect. We've had active testimony now. It's been quite some years ago. I think I was relatively new to the board at the time, and I think this is like my 11th or 12th year on the board, or maybe my 10th year. I'm not sure. But in any event, we actually had live testimony from people that, from both parents and now adults, but formerly children who had been sent through the unification camp process, registering complaints about the way in which it was done, whether there was scientific support for what was being done. So I thought it would be appropriate for us to consider the possibility of supporting this bill, given that past history and given that all we have done in working with some child custody stakeholders in attempting to make sure there's adequate protection for children within the context of family law proceedings. So I'd like to make a motion that we support, that we recommend to the board that we take a support position relative to SB 331.
I second that motion.
It's been moved by Dr. Phillips to recommend a support position to SB 331, and it's been seconded by Dr. Kasuga. Thank you. Is there, Dr. Kasuga, do you have further comment on this now that we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I agree to the points that Dr. Phillips have raised. And I think that it wasn't only when you were new to the board, because you've been in the board way longer than me, but like during my time in the board, that this has come up as well. And I think that a support position would help with regards these situations that have been brought to our attention.
Thank you both. Is there any staff comment on this item? I see none. Could we, Ms. Sorick.
I just want to say that I appreciate the comments from the committee today and our communication with our child custody stakeholders. So just wanted to make that comment that I appreciate the motion and the conversation today.
Thank you. I see no other committee or staff comment. Let's open public comment.
We are taking public comment on all of 5C. If you'd like to make a comment.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Taking public comment on 5.6, 5 SB 331. We have a motion on the floor to recommend a support position.
My apologies. We are taking comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And our first request comes from Dr. Courtney Knapp. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, I work with children and adolescents and some clients this definitely applies to. And the kids I work with very much know what they do and don't want. And so I very much appreciate the move to support this because forcing it doesn't help the children at all. So anyways, thank you so much for your motion to support.
Thank you. My apologies. Go ahead, please.
Is there any other public comment?
Yes, our next request comes from Joe Linder Crow. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Joe Linder Crow, I'm the CEO of the California Psychological Association. This is a hugely complicated bill. And at CPA, we have been working over the past several weeks, for sure, with a group of experts. We've spent really a number of hours analyzing the language in this bill. A group of experts who have worked in this space for many, many years and have offered, we have offered several sets of amendments, suggested amendments. The aim of the bill, as we understand it, was to prevent the use of reunification camps. But the bill is also tangled up with language having to do with therapy for families and for kids, very broad language that we believe stepped over into asking judges, for example, to make decisions about what evidence-based treatments are and are not. Very broad language such as what is in the best interest of the child without very much clarification or any clarification on who would be deciding those kinds of things. So we've been working for weeks trying to improve the language so that it's not so broad that it
15 seconds.
Has the results of sweeping up a lot of things that would be very not helpful and would actually could prevent psychologists from doing the kind of work they need to do with families. So it's a very complicated bill, and I would ask you to really consider carefully your position on this.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips?
Yeah, I think it would be useful before we actually have this come before the full board for consideration of the support position, if to the extent that it's been reduced to writing, the California Psychological Association could provide us with whatever input they've provided to the author so that we can more fully consider the issue at that time.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Ms. Sorick?
I just also wanted to offer that we can provide an analysis for the August board meeting when the board considers the committee's recommendation.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
I can't tell who that was.
This is
Dr. Kasuga, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I was just about to make a suggestion with board staff that we analyze the bill from our side. I appreciate the anything that CPA can provide us as well as part of that analysis. Where I'm coming from as a board member, and when I'm thinking right now, and of course this is with with just the limited information that I have from what is presented currently, and I'm looking forward to getting more information about the bill. So based on of what our experience with the board is, it's really hard for us to not be able to do much with regards to the situation because of our mandate of, we're only able to enforce things that's related to, our licensees, and we don't license reunification camps. So that has always been kind of like the issue that the board has faced in the past. Our hands are tied when it comes to some of the practices that's being done that's related to, people's psychological well-being. So any information that I think that we can gather will be helpful with regards the next board meeting when we take this up again.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Yes, next we have Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman again from California Psychological Association. I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments from Dr. Joe Lindercrow. We've been working with extensively on this complex bill, as she mentioned, with several different experts in this area. And we are offering amendments that will, and in negotiations with the author's office, to more clearly define and limit how this would apply. We agree that the limiting that the camps, forced overnight treatment in camps, should be prohibited. But the problem with this bill, and our experts are very upset about it, is it's written in such a broad way that it would also interfere with various types of outpatient treatment that is working with families, and that there are undefined terms that would put it in the hands of the judge to determine what's an appropriate treatment. And so they are really, really concerned that this could actually harm children by severely limiting what types of treatment can be ordered. So I'm glad that the committee is willing to look more deeply into the potential unintended consequences of this bill and the breadth of it and the problems with it. So yes, CPA will be glad to provide more information at the next board meeting. And thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Is there any other, Dr. Phillips?
And in fact, if CPA could provide us with that input to staff prior to the meeting, then we'll be able to work that into our analysis of the bill for purposes of consideration of the motion to the full board. So hopefully not, so I'm just encouraging to get us the information early, I guess. Thank you.
I was going to say that, Dr. Phillips. Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay. So we have a motion to recommend a support position for SB 331, child custody, child abuse, and safety. It was moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Kasuga. Shall we call for a vote?
Sure.
Okay. Cervantes,
Aye.
Kasuga,
Aye.
and Phillips.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that discussion. And if our the folks from CPA can help us with our analysis as soon as possible before the August meeting, so that when we consider this item before the full board, we can that input into what the board decides. Thank you. The next item that I'd like to discuss is item number 8. So this is item 5C8, SB 544 Laird Bagley Keene Open Meeting Act teleconferencing. This item begins on page 554. Mr. Polk.
Yes, thank you. SB 554 would amend existing law that would remain operative after July 1st of 2023, which would allow state bodies to hold public meetings through teleconferencing with specified notice and accessibility requirements. The bill would have to, the public would have to be given the teleconference number, website, or other online platform to access the meeting, and at least one member of the state body must be present at the specified location. It also specifies that members of the public can access the state body without having to submit public comments prior to the meeting. Additionally, the bill provides access for people with disabilities and requires state bodies to disclose if any other individuals 18 years or older are present at the remote location of the meeting. The bill is currently in the Assembly and was referred to the Committee on Governmental Organization. There is a recommendation from staff to take a support if amended position. The amendments would remove the attached provisions that are outlined in the bill analysis, specifically to the provisions related to technical difficulties, to where if those are present, the board would be required to adjourn the meeting for that day, and also to remove the provisions regarding the notification of individuals 18 years or older who are maybe present in the meeting at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do we have a motion? Actually, well, let me just ask for the motion. Do we have a motion to recommend a support position on SB 44 if amended?
So moved.
I second.
It's been moved and second by, it's been moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Kasuga to recommend a support position for SB 44 if amended. Is there any committee comment? Is there any staff comment? I just, on this one, I'm glad that, I'm happy to see how closely we've been following it and following the changes and taking a position that understands the nuance of and the importance of having flexibility to meet in this way. So thank you to the staff for helping us stay on top of this item. Let's open public comment before we come back for a vote. Thank you.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button to raise your hand. Dial in users, you may dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to look around for just a couple of seconds here. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes.
Wait, hold on.
Oh,
We have one. Sheila J. Henderson, hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to observe your meeting. My question was, why is there the provision of 18 years and older? Just because, well, anyway, that's my question.
Ms. Ng, I think this is longstanding and
No, what that was and whether.
oh, Ms. Ng, did you hear that?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I actually, to the commenter's comment, I don't know the purpose of that, and including that in the bill, and I can't speak to the existence of that requirement previously.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment. Ms. Sorick?
I just wanted to add a little context to the concern. On the technical issue, we had a meeting fairly recently where we had technical difficulty, and it was a perfect example of, folks trying to get credit for CPD, took time off their schedule to join the meeting. The individuals on the board took time off to participate in the meeting. When we don't have the flexibility to continue the work and the business of the board, without that flexibility, it really hamstrings our ability to conduct business, as we only typically have our meetings on a quarterly basis. And at times, as you all know, we have petition hearings where we may be paying an administrative law judge, a deputy attorney general, and a court reporter. And if technical difficulties arise, having to adjourn the meeting creates an undue financial burden. On the individual announcement of anyone that's 18 or older, this may put awkward predicament if a board member is calling in from their office and their licensee. There may be patients present in their office, and that would possibly violate HIPAA if they were to disclose clients that are in their office, and staff members that may be present, partners or spouses that may be present if calling in from a home. It really is kind of delving into the privacy of the individuals calling in. So those are our concerns, and I appreciate you all considering those concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. Dr. Phillips?
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple of thoughts. One is with relationship to technical difficulties. Obviously, we do everything within our ability to make sure that everyone can participate to the fullest extent. Some collateral technical difficulty that we have no control over, it would be really impractical for us not to proceed with the meeting because somebody was having a problem logging in or something of that nature, which arguably to me, the language would allow for that. So it's always our intention to include all our stakeholders, and we would never do anything to intentionally exclude them. But there may be things beyond our control that may make it difficult for one or more individuals to participate in the meeting. And as Ms. Sorek pointed out, it's not practical for 9 board members, several staff members, an administrative law judge, the attorneys that are coming for hearings, et cetera, for us to put everything on hold because there is some collateral technical difficulty. Excuse me, that was a spam call. The second thing I wanted to mention was, just to clarify, I don't think that any board member would be in their office and have a client present with them at the time that they're calling in. I would think that would constitute a multiplicity of legal and ethical problems. But I think there are situations in which, if we're working from home or if our colleagues are working in the office with clients, for instance, that it would not only be impractical, but it would be illegal for us to identify all the people that might be somewhere in the immediate vicinity of that address. So I do think that's an important practical consideration, and I'm so glad that board staff and board management has flagged that for us, because that would be very problematic. So with those things in mind, I will discontinue speaking.
Thank you. Is there any other board or staff comments? So we have a motion to recommend a support position for SB 44 if amended. It was moved by Dr. Phillips and second by Dr. Kasuga. Did I get that right? Or
yes,
was
ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Gage, can you please take the vote?
Certainly. Cervantes. Cervantes.
Aye.
Kasuga.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we are going to take any committee or staff comment and then public comment on the whole item 5C, the watch bills.
Madam Chair, this is Dr.
Yes.
Kasuga.
Yes.
I was wondering if we could also discuss AB 665.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, let's do that first. So we are still on item 5C. These are our watch bills, and a committee member has asked that we pull AB 665 for discussion. So I'm going to ask Mr. Polk to help us with an overview, and then we could discuss it. So item 5C, number 2, AB 665 Carrillo, minors consent to mental health services, which begins on page 219 of the combined packet. And now, Mr. Polk, can you help?
Yes, absolutely. AB 665 would allow a minor who is 12 years of age or older to consent to mental health treatment or counseling on an outpatient basis or to a residential shelter service if the minor is mature enough to participate intelligently in the outpatient service or residential shelter service, and without having to present a danger or serious physical or mental harm to themselves or to others, or if the minor is the alleged victim of incest or child abuse. The bill would align the existing laws by removing the additional requirement that in order to consent to mental health treatment or counseling on an outpatient basis or to a residential shelter service, the minor must present a danger or serious physical or mental harm to themselves or to others, or be the alleged victim of incest or child abuse. The bill is currently in the Senate and was referred to the Committee on Judiciary. A hearing was scheduled. However, that hearing was canceled upon the author's request.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Dr. Kasuga, I'm going to ask I'm going to ask for your comments first.
Yes. So I, as part of like, our board mandate, I always look at consumer protection both as like, access as well as protecting people that are already receiving psychological services, and anything that expands access to psychological services in a way is protective, and I think supports our mandate. So I'm thinking of recommending to the full board that we take a support position for this bill.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Dr. Phillips?
Mr. Polk, I always find the language of where things stand within the legislature to be somewhat confusing. So, excuse me. But so the author asked that the bill be pulled. What does that mean? Is the bill not moving forward?
Not necessarily. It just means that the author just requested the hearing of the bill to be pulled from that scheduled hearing. But the bill is always open to be the hearing's always open to be rescheduled. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the bill has stopped completely. It just means for that specific time, the author pulled the request for the hearing.
But it means that it may be pulled. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a possibility for the bill not to move forward. That's always a possibility. But at this time, it's just kind of stopped in its tracks.
Okay.
Kind of say.
So I guess I want to ask staff then, would be the appropriate thing be to continue to watch the bill, or should we take a position on it now?
Ms. Sorick? Maybe she can help us.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that on the 12th, there were some substantive amendments made to the bill, and then it was re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary on the Senate side. So if it is the will of the committee, perhaps with the amended language, we could provide an analysis on the bill and present it to the board at the August committee meeting or the August board meeting. Just because there have been some substantive changes made to the bill from the text that's provided in the meeting materials.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. Dr. Phillips.
Given that we haven't seen then the bill with its technical amendments, perhaps we could just pull it forward for the board to consider it as a whole rather than taking a position at this time.
That sounds good to me. So can we request that board staff do an analysis with the substantive amendments and then we can definitely take it up on the next board meeting.
I concur. Thank you for bringing this discussion, Dr. Kasuga. So, Ms. Sorick, I think that's what we would like to see is an analysis and recommendation for our board meeting in August. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to open public comment on AB 665. Then we'll address this whole agenda item in public comment separately, in case anybody has public comment on the other items we didn't discuss in more detail. So right now, public comment on item number 2, AB 665.
We are now taking public comment on AB 665. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button on your screen. or dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And our first request for comment comes from Sheila J. Henderson. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
I'm sorry, I did not raise my hand, but I left it raised.
All right.
No question.
Thank you. And with that, it does not appear we have any request for comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much. So now I'm going to ask that we open public comment for item 5C, our watch bills. We discussed items 2, 6, and 8, but we're opening public comment for any other item on this agenda.
We are now taking public comment on all of 5C, like I tried to do earlier. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap the hand button on your screen to raise your hand, dial *3 if you are a dial-in user, or type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And we do not have any requests for comment at the moment.
Okay, before I move to item 6, I just want to check in if there was any other committee or staff comment on item 5C.
Not for myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see none. So we'll move to item 6. And item 6 is legislative items in legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on a future committee or board meeting agenda, and or whether to hold a special meeting or committee or board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.4. Is there any board or staff comment on future legislative items? I see none. Can we open public comment on this item?
We are now taking public comment on future legislative items. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button on your screen, dial *3 to raise your hand, or type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a couple of seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. So we are moving to item number 7. But before I begin, I just want to check in. We're moving pretty smoothly through the rest of our agenda. So if we go a little bit past noon and then adjourn, is that okay with everyone? Dr. Phillips?
That'd be fine with me. I'm just wondering if we could take a 5-minute break.
Would you like to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back to item number 7. So we'll resume at 11:52. I'm sorry, 42, 11:42. Before we resume our business, Mr. Gage, can you help us establish quorum again?
I certainly can. Cervantes.
Here.
Kasuga.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
All present.
Okay. So item number 7 is where we left off and where we'll continue now. This is the regulatory update, review, and consideration of additional changes. And for this one, this item begins on page 305 of the combined packet. Ms. Whitney, will you be providing us an overview?
I will not. It will be Mr. Polk.
Oh, Mr. Polk, sorry.
Yes, so update on the regulatory package, starting with 7A, the inactive psychological associates registration and reactivating that psychological associate registration. This regulation package allows a psychological associate to request that the board place their active registration in inactive status. In addition, the proposed regulations would allow the board to place the registration in an inactive status with the registrant when the registrant has no primary supervisor. While the registration is in active status, it will stop the time counting towards the cumulative total of 6 years of registration limitation. The board is also proposing that the adoption of the process for reactivating of an active psychological associate or I apologize. On May 19th, the proposed regulatory language was accepted by the board members, and the regulatory package is continuing in the rulemaking process. Currently, the package is in the drafting phase. This phase includes preparation of the regulatory package and collaborative reviews by board staff and legal counsel. Would you like me to continue to 7B?
Yes.
This regulatory package is regarding the disciplinary guidelines and uniform standards related to substance abuse licensees. This would update the board's disciplinary guidelines, including conforming changes pursuant to AB 2138 conviction and substantial relationship criteria and the department's uniform standards for substance abuse licensees. On April 21st, the review of the proposed language was completed by board staff and legal counsel, and the proposed new language will now be presented to the full board and board members at the August 18th board meeting.
Thank you. And let's move through items C, D, E. Then we'll open to staff or committee comment and then public comment. So okay. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The 7C is referring to the regulatory package for pathways to licensure. This regulatory package would streamline the licensing process and removes unnecessary barriers for applicants and the supervisors who support their training. Currently, this package is in the drafting phase. In this phase includes the preparation of the regulatory package and also includes the collaborative reviews by board staff and the legal counsel. 7D, enforcement provisions. This regulatory package would update the board's enforcement provisions for the listed sections. This package is also currently in the drafting phase and the preparation for the regulatory package and reviews. 7E, the corporation package would update the board's requirements for professional corporations provisions. Also, this one as well is currently in the drafting phase and the preparation and collaborative reviews between board staff and legal counsel. And the last one, 7F, this regulatory package updates the statutory and regulatory sections needed to implement the EPPP Part 2, the skills exam. On May 19th, the board adopted the statutory and regulatory changes that would implement the EPPP Part 2 effective January 1st of 2026. And this package is currently in the drafting phase as well.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any staff or committee comment on the regulatory update? Okay, we'll go ahead and open public comment for item 7 on the agenda.
We are now accepting public comment for item 7. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button to raise your hand. Dial-in users, dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Let's take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes. Okay, we are going to move to item 8 on the agenda, which is recommendations for agenda items for future board meetings. Please note that the committee may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter future meeting. Is there any committee or staff comment on this item? Ms. Sorick.
Just wanted to remind folks that are on the call that we do not have any other committee meetings planned for this year. However, we do have 2 upcoming board meetings, one on August 19th and one on November 2nd and 3rd. So I just wanted to let folks know that we will be discussing legislation, but at board meetings from this point forward for the calendar year of 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Kasuga.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a comment related to future legislation regarding advances in technology related to psychological services. I know that there are a lot of advances in technology happening in the field related to maybe the use of AI in therapy, the use of kind of like psychedelics in therapy, as well as use of virtual reality in therapy. And I don't know if there are legislation related to those, but I'm wondering if there are any, if we can keep an eye out on those so we can bring it to the committee for discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. I think that's wise for us to keep an eye on these emerging topics. We are in my day job at a professional school monitoring developments on AI and how it affects our work in moving forward. That's wise for us to keep an eye on these things. Is there any other committee or staff items for future meetings? Okay, let's open public comment.
Now is the time to make public comment for future meetings. If you would like to make a comment, please raise that hand by hitting the hand button on your screen or dialing *3 if you're a call-in user. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Before we conclude, I just want to give a special shout out to Ms. Sorick and Mr. Burke for their work over the past few months in navigating staff transition and keeping the work of our committee going with great care. And so much of this work is sensitive to the legislative calendars and our own meeting calendars, which takes a lot of brain power, I am sure, to keep everything moving on time and on schedule. So just a special thank you for your work over the many months to navigate all of these things for us. We will see everyone at our